All right, now that we have covered the South and Jim Crow laws and what's going on with the African Americans following the Civil War, now let's look into where everybody's going. A lot of people are migrating to the West during this period of time. So you're going to understand how Reconstruction to the end of the beginning of the early 20th century changed the face of the United States because we expanded and we created new states. So why would Westward Movement intensify after the Civil War? What are some reasons you can think of? Think about the South is pretty much destroyed. If you look at these images, this is the South. That's cannonballs that have destroyed buildings and homes and farmland. This is in a city that it's just absolutely destroyed and devastated following the war. So following the war, the westward movement of settlers intensified into the region between Mississippi River and the Pacific Ocean, which is huge as we know today. This is known as the era of the American cowboy. It extended from immediately before until just after the Civil War, where the cowboys helped herd the cattle. So there were long cattle drives where you herded the cattle for hundreds of miles over unfenced open land in the West in order to take the cattle to a market where they could be transported, taken care of and then transported by train. You also have a lot of African American cowboys during this time period. Farming on the Great Plains, you have the Homestead Act of 1862, which was a law that gave free public land in the Western Territories to settlers who would live on and farm the land. No Confederate soldiers were allowed to apply for land grants under the Homestead Act, and by the time that the Homestead Act was repealed, the United States government had distributed more than 270 million acres of land to individuals. It's a pretty great deal. The Pacific Railway Act provided government support for the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, which means a railroad that spans from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean. Farming on the Great Plains. Americans moved west in order to rebuild their lives following the Civil War, especially white Southerners and African Americans. New technologies that helped change the West, the railroad encouraged westward settlement. If you can see the railroad map here, you can see where the railroads all stretched post-Civil War. So vast regions now easily covered by railroad. You don't have to walk or ride a horse. Railroad will go much faster. New technologies that changed the West, you have the mechanical reaper, which made farming more prosperous, successful. So a standard reaper, which is pictured below, is like a scythe that you chop the grains down with. It's a big blade, and it was dangerous, but it also took like a really long time. So the mechanical reaper was a machine that would automatically cut, thresh, and bundle the grain while being pulled through a field by horses, so it made it a lot easier and a lot less people. McCormick's machine meant that the prairies of the Midwest could now become the breadbasket of the nation because it was so much more prosperous. So that's an image of the McCormick mechanical reaper. Results of the westward movement. So before the Civil War, the West was largely an unsettled frontier, known as the Untamed Wild West. By 1900, the West was a region of farms, ranches, and towns, so it was no longer untamed. Now it was tamed and civilized. So new states were then created in the Great Plains and the Rocky Mountains region. And by the early 20th century, all the states that make up the continental United States, so that are all attached here, had been admitted to the Union. So it's a pretty big deal. Another result was the forcible removal of American Indians from their lands, and that would continue throughout the remainder of the 19th century as settlers continued to move west following the Civil War. So we originally pushed them out into the West, and now we're kicking them out of the land because we want it. So we continue our discrimination against Native Americans.